Hey, so I just received a question from somebody who is going through the online program and said that they were still a little bit confused about the difference between an active and a dormant disconnects. So I want to go through that. A couple things I would like to say first before we get into the material is one, sometimes when I meet people, they say, oh yeah, I had a question about that, but I didn't want to bother you. And I just want you to know that it is not a bother to answer questions about BGI and the applications and the theory and the practice. It is my passion. It is what I love to talk about and I love to teach about. So if you have any questions or doubts or concerns or like there's things that aren't clear, of course, I want you to develop clarity so that you end up owning the material. That is my goal for you. So please don't hesitate. If you have questions, send me an email and I can throw up a video. We can set up an online call. And what that does is it helps me to understand where the teaching perhaps wasn't clear. Just because it makes sense to me doesn't mean it's going to make sense to everybody. And the way that I explain it might not be clear that day. So please, please, please don't feel bad about asking further questions. It makes me so happy because I know that means people are diving into the practice and into the work. So it's one thing to, hear it, but it's a different thing to feel it. And that's where the challenge of doing this online stuff is. And that's why we have the online program, but then it's followed up by in person, because we have to have time to be together in order to play with these concepts live. And so that you can say, hey, this is what, after listening and doing the online program, this is what I think a disconnect feels like. But I'm not sure whether it's an active or a dormant, or does this feel like a track to you? And that way we can make sure that we're all on the same page, which is what we've always done in in-person seminars. And so the difference between active and dormant disconnects. When you do a scan, starting from the feet, going up the legs and up the body, down the arms, up the head, when we're scanning, we're just gathering information, right? We're not like imposing our thoughts. We're just saying, what do I notice? So the first time you do a scan from the feet up to the head, including the arms, just ask yourself, what am I noticing? Do I notice any big changes in tone? And when you do, we know that is a disconnect, right? But we don't know whether it's an active or a dormant. So it's like, okay, I'm feeling that there's a disconnect here, and I'm feeling that there's a disconnect here. Great. Then we're going to go back and give more attention to each of those disconnects. And we're going to ask some questions. Is that disconnect, is that sense of difference getting more? Is the intensity behind that disconnect or behind that wall, is it changing? Is it growing? Is it getting more agitated, more uncomfortable? Is it building as the person is lying there on the table? If so, that is an active disconnect. And the places that I notice those a lot are like around L5. If somebody has an L5 disc issue or L4, oftentimes we'll find a disconnect, and oftentimes it's like it's just growing. It is an active process that is building while the person is on the table. Sue used to always use the analogy of waves hitting against the wall, right? So that it's like it shows you that there's motion, there's a crescendo happening. The music is getting louder and more intense. And the difference between what's happening on one side of the wall and what's happening on the other side of the wall is getting more and more noticeable. So when you see people on the table who are like fidgeting around and uncomfortable, and they're putting their hands maybe underneath their hips, or they're wiggling or trying to stretch, oftentimes that's their body just saying to you, hey, I've got an active disconnect going on. Like, it's really uncomfortable. Other places that we can often find active disconnects are places where there's been recent trauma, recent injury, recent surgery, or inflammation. Let's think of some areas where we as chiropractors are used to feeling inflammation. How about when we have those counter-rotated spinuses where we have all of that muscular facilitation, right? And the muscles are pulling so hard to try and create a stability where those spinuses are counter-rotated. Oftentimes that will create an active disconnect, and the person will be like, I've got something going on right here. And that something is not actually a subluxation, but it is an active disconnect. It can be a subluxation as well, but it can also be an active disconnect. I remember being in chiropractic college and feeling that very common situation where there was tension building, and then like in the mid-thoracics, you would just get there and you would start wanting to go, I just need to do a thrust here, nice P to A thrust, and bust this up, right? That is often an area of active disconnect. Not necessarily that location in the spine, but just that feeling of like there's so much tension and it's building and it's getting stronger. And as a chiropractor, we want to get in there and just, bust it up. But the thing is, and many of you have experienced this, if it is an active disconnect and we go in there with an osseous force, lots of times we're going to end up doing the exact same thing on every visit because it's not a part of a subluxation track. It's actually a disconnect. And that is the way the body is like pulling the cord out in that area, or putting extra electricity or extra power or extra input into that area to try and say, help, 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 help. Okay, so those are all examples of active disconnects. The process is building. So when you do a scan and you're like, okay, I have a disconnect here, I have a disconnect here, let's just start with this one down lower, because we always in the posterior geometry are going to start with the inferior most disconnect first, right? Whether it's in terms of evaluation or how we're going to address it. So let's say we have this disconnect here, and we swipe or scan, however you want to call it, and just get a sense of the system. Then we come back and we start again, and we're like, okay, this actually feels like there's more intensity than there was the first time I checked it. That's an active disconnect. A dormant disconnect, we'll feel that change in tone and we go, oh yeah, wow, let's just say between occiput and C1. I've got tension, 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 tension. I come up to C1 and I'm like, I've got really nice tension or tone. And then I come up into occiput and it's like there's not anything going on there. It's mushy. It's like the plug is disconnected. So that's a disconnect. Then we go, okay, so I've noticed that. Then we come back to the feet and we're coming back up to get more information. We come up to that area and we go, it's still here. I still have the disconnect, but it's not growing. It's the same. It's stable. The amount of shift in tone is the same as before. That is a dormant disconnect. You can find both. I feel like I probably find more dormant disconnects in the posterior geometry than active disconnects. But if I'm talking about a symptomatic population, maybe I would find more active disconnects. I'm not sure. But that's just me. And so ask other people who are applying the BGI concepts in practice what they find. Okay, so I'm hoping that kind of creates some clarity in the difference between active and dormant disconnects and how they feel. The location, don't just assume that because something is at L5 that it's active. Not so. It's how it feels. It's how it's expressing in the system. Is it building? Is it getting stronger as they're lying there on the table? That's an active disconnect. If it's stable, whether it goes from low tension to higher tension, and the reason we know that there's a disconnect is because that abrupt change in tone, but it's stable, that's a dormant disconnect. If it goes from medium tension to low tension, but it's stable, that's also a dormant disconnect. So it's the way it's expressing in the body. Is it growing? Active. Is it stable? Dormant.